I have participated in 2 of Clinton Jones' 5 community 3D render challenges, and this one, I'm going for the top 100 spot. You may know him also as Clint from the Corridor Crewcast, but I know him as Punisher, this guy who hosts awesome challenges on his YouTube channel about once a year, and I'm always excited when they have them because I know I'm about to see some amazing art. Now, I have a pretty deep connection with these challenges because the first one I took part in was the dynamic machines, and it was when I was really first starting to get a hold of Blender. If we look at it right now, honestly, it's not the most impressive submission. Compare that to where I am today, making renders like this, and you can see I've stepped up my game quite a bit. Now, I plan to get in the top 100 of the Endless Engines competition, and this week I focused solely on the environment. Endless Engines is Clint's new 3D community render challenge, and this time it's all about automotives. We're creating some sort of machine or vehicle that goes through a scene, comes in on one side, out the other, and I am already seeing tons of creative results in the Discord. So from the get-go, I had 2 major ideas. I either wanted to create a cyberpunk city with a train monorail system as my focus, or something a little bit more punky, Brooklyn-y, of a car racing through the night streets of a populated city, and that's the one I ended up going with. Now that week 1 is done, where are we at? Well, let me show you. So as you can see, I've basically finished the environment around the vehicle and I haven't touched it yet. And that's because for the first week of the challenge, I really wanted to nail down my environment. I knew that environment creation is kind of my strong suit. It's something that I use a lot in my weekly challenge submissions, and I definitely wanted to bring that over into the community challenge this time. And I am glad I did because I'm feeling really strong about this environment. There are still a few rough edges and I think I need to do some tweaks to the lighting. However, I'm liking the way it looks. Originally, when I first started working on this, I had it going at the full speed of the starter project, but I realized I was just zooming through the city too fast, so I dropped the speed by about 20%, so it's 80% speed, and I think it just looks perfect this way. But how did we build this? Well, I'll go over a very quick overview. So the very first thing I did was I created a plane, created a hair system, and I started distributing different pieces of my Kitbash 3D kit onto it to create this city. Now, it didn't really work well with my computer, it really destroyed my performance, so what I ended up doing was actually undoing that and doing it all through the wonderful, beautiful geometry nodes. I love these things, they make things render honestly a lot quicker, have a lot less performance issues. This is still a very heavy scene, but geometry nodes made it possible, so I am very happy for that. However, these buildings have no lights, so how did I do that? Well, I used a brick texture on the glass material for the windows, and I'm using that as a factor for an emission texture. So certain windows turn on, certain windows turn off. Next, I needed to fill up the foreground a little bit more, so what I did was I used one of these tram railway systems as my actual road. It was actually really useful to have this because it comes with this built-in little barrier on the side and has little micro details throughout the road, and I did end up covering that up with a brick material. However, I think I actually like the way it looked with some of it exposed, so I'm gonna have to play a little bit more with that. However, this was a very strong start. And then finally, I also knew that I wanted to break up this scene into really 3 portions. One was an underpass section, which is where it's going underneath some sort of tramway, like you see in the streets of Chicago. Thirdly, I wanted a little bit of a tunnel section, so you feel like you're enclosed and a little bit more claustrophobic before you open up to the wide city and you're racing out into the end. And then finally I started actually doing some set dressing where I added something like a phone booth, a bus stop, I added some lamps that I used an array modifier to spread throughout the scene, and then I also added smaller things like garbage cans, benches, and other stuff along those lines. The interior of the scene was actually way too dark initially, so what I ended up doing was creating a bunch of area lights, and I scattered them throughout the scene into areas that I really wanted to pop out. And basically, I used that technique anywhere I feel there was something that was too dark or needed focus. For example, I threw an area light shining onto these trees and this brick wall, so it's all lit up. I lit up this little overhead area so you actually can see the bridge there, and once I fill this place with people, you'll actually be able to see people walking around. And after that was all done, the scene felt very more lit and alive, and I loved it. For the very final touch, I added this foggy volumetric thing that I've actually made a tutorial for. You can see it up in the corner. And that was where we finished week 1. We've really nailed down a large portion of the environment. I think I'm probably about 80% of the way there. I just need to make some small changes to the foreground to bring it up to 100%, and then we can finally move on to our car next week. And that car is going to be based off of the GN-JAP V8. This car is perfectly steampunk, and I think it's going to be so much fun to model. I really want to model this car and texture it myself because, I mean, hey, it's endless engines. That's like half the fun of this challenge, right? So I'm very excited to continue with this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next week. Peace.